Hello everyone, this week we are once again heading out to Long Island as the weather is still pretty warm here in New York City, and so I decided to do a little bit of hiking to burn off some steam from sitting down in front of the computer and desk grading midterm exams all week long. And so we are visiting the Connetquot River State Park, which is a beautiful place to spend few hours on a nice day. The park was opened to the general public in 1973, and few years later it was declared the first state park preserve. So a preserve is essentially an area which protects and preserves the natural landscape and hence also provides a habitat for various endangered or rare species of birds and animals. However, even before becoming a state park, the area has a very interesting history. William Nicol, an early European settler from England, acquired the land at the end of the 1600s and eventually expanded the property to the point where it was the largest estate on Long Island, being called the Islip Grange. In 1820, Eliphalet Snedecor, I probably so mispronounced the name, and this is actually one of the reasons why I sometimes look up names for these videos, because I see them on paper and I sometimes mispronounce it. So think about me saying these names from memory. It would have led to a lot of mistakes. But anyway, in 1820, Eliphalet, I forget if he bought or leased the land, but he opened an inn for travelers. And then in 1866, it was bought by the local sportsmen and became the Southside Sportsmen Club of Long Island, which existed in that form until the 1960s, so for about 100 years or so. But the buildings you are looking at are the original buildings from that era. It was a recreational club which had an exclusive membership only for those wealthy and influential men of that time. This here is the old annex, which was built in 1878 as the club was expanding and additional bedrooms were needed. And this is the original main building. I will be honest, it's pretty cool, especially this time of the year. It so fits in with the surrounding nature. This is the main entryway and an old school bench to the right of the door. Here is a little bit of a sneak peek into the inside of the house, which is just incredible. It's a time capsule, and maybe in the future I can do a video looking at the house in a little bit more detail, like the architecture and different items inside. I think that would be a very interesting video. Here we have an old fireplace, which I will be honest, I would not want to be a person moving it or dealing with it, as these old cast iron fireplaces are insanely heavy. Here we have the individual lockers where the men would keep their things like, I don't know, fishing rods, for example. So these are just some of the things we could find inside, because again, this video, I want to focus on the outside, but there's really so much to see on the inside as well. Like even this old map of Long Island, which I always love to look at and see what changed throughout time. And a dinner table, of course, with all the original silverware. Incredible. And so I still have to show you more of this place in the future, one way or another. Outside in the back of the house, we have another small little building called the ice house. Before refrigerators, buildings like these would be used to store and preserve food. Ice would be placed inside, which was generally collected in the winter months by cutting it out of the local ponds and lakes and packing it tightly into a building just like this, insulating it further with things like straw or possibly sawdust. In some cases, inside there would be like a pit dug out into the soil, into the ground, and there is where the ice would be placed, hence keeping it cool, and it would then be covered by straw, let's say, on all sides. So yeah, I mean, when you really think about it, certain things that today we take for granted, like even a refrigerator in our kitchen, are really sort of things that in a big way changed how we live. Hence, I always tell my students to always be on the lookout for these really new technologies that change everyday life, like for example drones, which are essentially changing warfare, right? When we see wars taking place, like for example between Russia or Ukraine, or things like AI and its influence on the educational system, or in general, anything that we look at these days. On the side, we have a new annex building built in 1899 right by the pond itself, so waking up early in the morning and looking out the window had to be a gorgeous view. The pond itself was created by William Nicol, so it predates the club. The pond was created around 1750 as a result of a dam and a mill being built. But before I show you the mill, one more thing. In front of the building, we have an old Dodge fire truck. These old trucks and cars look so cool to me. I'm guessing this one is probably from like the 1960s. By 1970s, cars begin to change their appearance somewhat. Again, there are always exceptions, but generally by 1970s, there was a lot of these right angles on cars. Everything was a rectangle or a square, whereas in the 1950s and 60s, the designs were a bit more curvy, flowy, circular, because after all, this was the space age. And so certainly it had an impact on the automotive industry. Like in the 1970s, these lights in the front, even though they would be round, around them, the casing itself would probably be like a rectangle or something like that. So sometimes you can tell apart the years of the cars, even based on these simple geometry shapes. Hence, I'm guessing this one is probably from the 1960s. And here we have the grist mill. Here we have an example of one of the stones which was used for grinding the grain. So generally one stone would be stationary, while the other stone would be connected through a series of gears and shafts to the wheel on the mill, which was turned using water, turning the stone and grinding the corn or the grain in between the two stones themselves. The second stone you see on the ground walking up to the mill. Hence, if you would not be paying attention, you can just walk over it and not even knowing it. In the 1880s, as the Sportsmen Club was growing, there was a pump building next to the mill where this here water-driven turbine pump was installed, which pumped water into the water tower, which was on the property, as well as a bathhouse. On it, you can still see the company which built it, Rodney Hunt, which is a company which still exists till this day, based in Massachusetts. And the mill itself, again, built around 1750, and it was restored in 2017, so quite recently. The mill is on one side of the road, and the pond is on the other, and there in the distance you see the new annex building. What a beautiful view. And if you stand long enough in this spot, you realize that the pond is like a major airport for ducks and geese taking off and landing every few minutes. It's actually quite interesting to just observe the pond itself, to be honest. Okay, so let's go on some trails. But take a look at the map to realize how big this preserve is. So everything you saw so far is essentially down there in the bottom corner of the map. And I will take you on the red and yellow trails, but if any of you would like to hike and be one with nature, take the blue trails and make sure you have some good shoes on. But these small walks away from the city are really what relaxes me and gives me some sanity in my busy life and schedule. It is here I can be alone with my thoughts, which is sometimes good, sometimes not. You know, not all thoughts are positive, always. But for a few minutes I get to play a little bit of daydreaming. For instance, like I always say, this YouTube channel for me is like a side project that I enjoy doing, and I really love sharing some of this knowledge and places with those who are interested in it. But, once in a while you do have these thoughts that run through your head of what would happen if I had millions of views and began making money off the channel. Well, then, believe it or not, my dream would not be to buy mansions or hypercars or anything like that, but rather a big chunk of land here on Long Island and convert it to like a park. I love things like landscaping and gardening, not to do it professionally, but I just like it and enjoy it because it relaxes me. And I like to build things and create small projects. So like not only, designing a garden, but building like small bridges in it, small wooden decorations, creating a canal for the water to pass through, things like that. And at the same time, to create like a family hub where different events could be organized for things like Halloween or Thanksgiving, Christmas, maybe setting up like a small orchard for apple picking, organizing free events once in a while. So like a really family-oriented hub here on Long Island where people would really enjoy spending their day. Because many times I walk around, especially ever since I began this YouTube channel, and I just noticed so many missed opportunities where something awesome can be created, and yet there is just concrete or simply grass. And again, sometimes you do not even need a lot of money, just a little bit of imagination and a vision in your head. And so I have an ambition, energy, and a vision, but no money. Something like this would cost millions of dollars. And so after about 2 minutes of being in La La Land as I'm walking on the trail, it's back to reality. But hey, it's not bad to dream like this, right? I mean, we tell small kids to dream big. Well, why do we have to stop when we turn into adults, right? But you know what is another thing I love about these nature walks this time of the year? You can collect some really nice pine cones. Why spend money buying them in stores and then them being scented with who knows what if you can collect them for free? Use it for decoration around the house, especially around Thanksgiving season, and put few of them together and you will have a really nice fresh pine smell. Or am I just being cheap? Probably. But if we follow this yellow trail, we will end up in the Connetquot hatchery where fish eggs are being hatched, like that of trout. You see, this here, young fish mature in these what are called raceways, where water is regulated. For example, fish like trout like cold water better since it holds more oxygen as opposed to warm water. That I learned that day. And I guess it's been a while since my days with chemistry textbooks, but it's kind of cool to know that. But do not forget to bring quarters with you, because you can get some food to feed the fish. Honestly, it smells like dog food. But here we go. And once I threw some food into the water, I realized the dangerous situation I was in. Mainly, these guys right away closing in on me. And those of you who were around things like geese, you know that they can be pretty aggressive when it comes to food. But I tried not to pay too much attention to them. Yeah, but they did eventually surround me. And it looked like they were about to push me into the water for missing some sort of a payment I owed them. After you feed the fish, you can take a small walk along the canal, which really has clean water, and it's a very nice atmosphere, very peaceful. Just a little distance going up, we have what's called the Rainbow Bridge, which we are going to cross onto the other side of the canal and return back to the car on the other side of the river. But from this trail, you can see the hatchery from a little bit of a distance and a different perspective. Just a short distance away, as you keep walking, we have the artesian wells, essentially water wells, dug deep into the ground to bring up groundwater. And then this water is carried away into the hatchery you just saw. The water is carried away using two raceways, or essentially what are two aqueducts. One is here, and the other one is here on the other side. So you do have these small little interesting things along the way. And if you continue and keep walking and walking, you come back from the other side of the pond, the mill, and the building, sort of where we began this journey in the beginning of the video. It's definitely a little workout to do the whole walk, but I think it is really worth it. I highly recommend if anyone will be visiting here. Like always, I hope you enjoyed this week's video, and I'm always hesitant to say this because I don't think my work is good enough. But if you like it, spread the word, share the links, subscribe if you haven't done so yet, and I will see you shortly in another video. Have a great week, everyone. Bye.